Uncut music interviews. We're back again. I have one of my favorites, and I know I said earlier that they can't all be favorites, but this one was really cool. I'm a big 60s music fan, and when it became a chance that I could interview Johnny Rivers, I said, oh, that would be cool. Love Johnny Rivers. So we met him at a little recording studios up in North Hollywood, I think, and oddly my wife went with me. Hang on, let me get that. It's probably her. So we met up with Johnny up in the valley in North Hollywood somewhere, and it was at a house that had a little recording studio in the back. It wasn't his place, it was a friend of his that we could meet him at and do the interview, which was really cool. So we walked in with a nice acoustic guitar. You can see by the lighting, we had a little tiny control room he sat at, and the cool thing is he sat there with his guitar and he'd play a couple of the licks of the songs that we talked about. And I remember as I was setting up, he was trying to learn the song Every Night by Paul McCartney off his first album. And he was kind of picking out the chords, and he said, I was just listening to this on my car on the way here, and what a great song this is. Another cool thing about this interview was my wife was along. We had just got married, and this was 2002, and she was holding the boom mic for me because I couldn't get any other crew members to make the trip up that day. So it was really, really fun. This was in 2002 in June, I believe. Johnny Rivers.
All right. First, I'll start in the present and just talk about your latest album, Back at the Whiskey. Can you just tell me a little bit about how that project came about?
Well, we played at the Whiskey for their 35th anniversary. Mario, who's the owner there now, asked if we would come down, and the guys from the Doors showed up, and it was fun. And I hadn't been in there or played in it for a long time, but it sounded good, it felt good, and it reminded me of the old days when we cut all those live albums there. And so that's when the idea hit me. I said, maybe we should come back in here after all these years, because all those old live albums did well, and a lot of those fans are still around and would probably enjoy something like this. So we enhanced the band. Because in the old days it was just three pieces, just a trio. But we brought in some extra players and had some guests come in and did a couple of acoustic numbers, and it actually came out very well. So it's called Back at the Whiskey, and it'll be around and part of our catalog.
The acoustic numbers, they aren't on the CD though, are they?
Yeah.
Which ones are the acoustic?
Oh, I did Sea of Heartbreak. I did an old song by Blind Faith.
Can't Find My Way Back Home.
Yeah, some of those tunes, yeah.
Okay. Can you describe what you think, or maybe you've heard from other people, describe what the Johnny Rivers sound is?
Well, it's very basic, especially the original stuff was just a lot of hand clapping and a lot of rhythm and bass and drums, and that was it. But the sound, the vocal sound and the style, I guess, is South Louisiana, or, it started down there. That's where I grew up, and so that it's got a little bit of the R&B, that South Louisiana Cajun stuff, and mixed in with a little country music. So I guess that's about it.
Great. Do you tour presently, or can people see you around the country?
Sure, we tour constantly. We mainly work weekends, Thursday through Sunday or something like that, or Friday and Saturday, and come back home. We don't stay on the road, and none of those long extended bus tours or anything like that. But we manage to get all over the country, and Canada and other countries as well. As a matter of fact, we just did 2 nights up in Toronto. So we get around very well. I'm on my way to Boston to play at the Hat Shell there.
Great. The album before this last Whiskey one was called Last Train.
Last Train to Memphis.
Yeah, that one was awesome.
Yeah.
I think was that around 98 or so?
Yeah.
I think we went and saw you at the Coach House down in San Juan Capistrano
right.
during that tour.
Yeah, well, Jack Tempchin and I, Jack wrote Peaceful Easy Feeling and Already Gone, and wrote Slow Dancin' that I had a big hit with. And so he and I got back together and wrote some songs and came up with that album. We actually wrote Last Train to Memphis as sort of a tribute to Elvis.
Yeah, there's some great songs on there.
Yeah.
I really like it. I saw Jack Tempchin like a month ago playing a little bar in Solano Beach. He plays there every Tuesday night.
And he plays in town here as well.
But I think that was very enjoyable.
A place called The Joint on Monday nights.
He had a lot of good players with him. What do you think you're best known for?
Well, I don't know. Secret Agent Man's very popular. Because the teenagers are into it as well, because it was an Austin Powers and Bowfinger, and it gets a lot of airplay. It's kind of a cult kind of thing, you know. So that's probably my most famous song as far as a sound and a guitar riff and all of that stuff. You know, probably the most recognizable. Memphis was a big hit. You know, Poor Side of Town was the #1 record. So, you know.
Could you give us a little bit of the Secret Agent riff?
The Secret Agent riff was the one that got all the guitar players started.
That's awesome. Yeah, between that song and like a lot of Ventures songs, I think everybody
Yeah.
started playing guitar.
Yeah, it's a lot like that surf stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, as a singer, you definitely have a different style, and you kind of. I actually sing and play guitar also, and I kind of imitate a little bit of how you sing in certain ways where there's like that, I call it self-compression, you know, where you kind of, that kind of thing, which is so awesome when you do that on your voice. What kind of influences do you have as a singer?
Well, like I said, growing up in South Louisiana, a lot of my early influences were R&B, guys like Fats Domino, and a lot of local South Louisiana artists that were, you know, not known nationwide, but were fairly influential in that area. Hank Williams, I used to listen to a lot of his stuff when I was a kid. You know, Johnny Cash, from the countryside of it. But, you know, of course, B.B. King, Bobby Blue Bland, Muddy Waters, early Ray Charles.
When you, back then, you were kind of known as more for singing or taking a cover song, someone else's song, and kind of making it totally your own. At least that's how I view it as a kid when I was at that time. Especially like you took Chuck Berry songs and made them a lot better than Chuck Berry ever could.
Well, it's not, you know, not that I wasn't writing at the time. It was interesting because I was writing a lot of songs, but it just so happens that we picked out, or my producer and the record company would always pick songs off these albums that I didn't write. And it was a good choice because they were hits, you know. But Poor Side of Town was proof that I could write a pretty good song. It was a #1 record, you know, so it just worked out that way. You know, people ask, well, you're basically a cover artist. I go, well, yeah, but I've had success with covering songs, but that's not all I can do.
Right. Did you write Big Sir? Going back to Big
Yeah,
Sir?
I
That's
did.
an awesome song.
Yeah.
Too.
I can give you a little of that. It's a cold and rainy Friday night. City life's got me all uptight. My mind keeps wandering far away. Something tells me it's time to leave LA. Going back to Big Sur.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Anyway, I'll get back on the interview now. I just love that. Going back to a little bit of the early days, I obviously read. I knew you were connected to the whiskey in the early days, but I was a little young then.
Well, I opened it from first opening night, you know, and that's actually we had built up a big following. We were like the hot thing in town prior to the opening the whiskey, and we got approached on the idea. And they said, if you'll sign with us, we'll take over this place and we'll call it the Whiskey. And so I agreed to it. I liked the concept, and we just brought our following up from the other place, so it was a smash from opening night. And of course, then we got a lot of national publicity and stuff, and Time Magazine and this and that. And Jack Parr came in at the time. That's how far back that goes, and did one of his shows out of there when that really helped, you know.
Was that covering like the go-go craze or something like that?
Well, that's what started it.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no go-go before that. The original Whiskey a Go-Go was a discotheque in Paris, and that's where the name came from. But all they did was play records. They didn't have live music, so we combined the two. They played records in between our sets.
And did you play there for an extended period of time? Or
Well, the first run was a little over a year, and then Memphis was a big hit, so they let me out to go do one-nighters around the country.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's very cool. At that time, was there a lot of the Byrds, Buffalo Springfield, those type of California bands starting, or was that a little later?
That was later.
Yeah.
This was '64. When we opened the Whiskey, it was when the Beatles' first hit with I Want to Hold Your Hand. So
Yeah, so that's right.
So the folk rock thing didn't really start till Bob Dylan hit with Like a Rolling Stone when he went electric, and then everybody jumped on that, and the Byrds and everybody combined the folk stuff and rock, you know. And but Dylan was responsible for really starting that whole thing, and but that wasn't till probably '66 or something like that, end of '65, '66.
Oh, okay, so there was definitely a period there before whatever they call the California
At least a
sound.
good year and a half or 2 years, yeah.
And then also you started your own record label, which at that time was fairly unheard of. Tell me how that all came about.
Well, my contract with the company I was with, Imperial Records, had expired, and I was the hottest act on the label at the time, so they naturally wanted to re-sign me, and so I said, okay, I want to stay with the label. I'm real happy, but as part of my deal to re-sign, I also want my own record company because I'd like to work with some other artists, and I think they kind of threw that to me as a bone, not thinking much would happen with it. And the first act we signed was The Fifth Dimension, and wound up producing Up, Up and Away. I had just hooked up with Jimmy Webb and signed him to my publishing company, and so he had written this song Up, Up and Away, and we went in and produced the album. And really, I think Up, Up and Away was the second single, and it became Record of the Year and Song of the Year. We got 2 Grammys for it, so we kind of kicked off in good style there.
What other bands were you recording or on your label or anybody else?
Well, Al Wilson. I signed a guy named Al Wilson that had a couple of pretty good size hits, and a writer named James Hendricks, who was part of the Mugwumps. He was at one time he was married to Mama Cass, so he was part of the John Phillips New York folk crowd, and he wrote Summer Rain. So we signed him, and he did an album for the label. But The Fifth Dimension was the most successful. And then the thing is, I eventually, I got behind on my own album commitments because I started putting so much time into the label. It was kind of exciting for me. And the president of the company at the time, Al Bennett, called me in and said, you know, you have to make a decision. Do you want to be a record company executive and a record producer, or do you want to be an artist? Because you're behind 2 albums on your So I thought about it and made the commitment to go on with my, and I turned The Fifth Dimension over to Bones Howe, who did a wonderful job producing them. First record he did was Aquarius Let the Sunshine In, which was a multi-million seller, and then they went on from there, Stone Soul Picnic and this and that. And so I just gave up producing them, which freed me up to go ahead and start working on my own albums.
Okay. Tell me a little bit more about Jimmy Webb or how he came about.
Well, actually, someone sent me a tape of his songs. There was about 10 songs on there, and I sat down and listened to it. I was at home, and they were interesting, but nothing that really knocked me out until I got to the last song. This is a good example of not turning the tape off until you've listened to all of it. As luck would have it, the last song on this tape was By the Time I Get to Phoenix. When I heard that song, I went, whoa, what a great song. So I called him and I said, hey, come on up here and let's get together. And so we went in the studio and I cut By the Time I Get to Phoenix. And I was in Poor Side of Town had just come off the charts from the #1 record. So we thought about releasing By the Time I Get to Phoenix as a follow-up, but we thought it sounded a little too much like Poor Side of Town. And so we put out Baby I Need Your Lovin' instead, which did very well, was a big record. But I had this song and my album was getting ready to come out, and I knew this song was a hit. I just knew it in my spirit, you know. So I called Glen Campbell's producer, and I said, you know, Glenn had just had a song called Gentle on My Mind, which was a semi-hit, got him on the charts. So I said, I got a song for him. Come on in here. So he met me down at my office, and I played him my test pressing of By the Time I Hit the Phoenix, which wasn't even out yet. And he went, whoa, that's great. So I gave him a copy of the test pressing, and about 2 weeks later, I hear Glen Campbell's record on the radio. And it was his first #1 record, which was great. And it was great for Jimmy Webb. It was great for me because I published the song, and it became one of the most recorded songs of all time. That and Volare. You remember Volare?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I was just jumping back to Summer Rain. I'm actually like an idiot. I saw James Hendricks on there, and I thought it was Jimi Hendrix that wrote the song.
No, James Hendricks.
Yeah.
Hendricks.
Oh, that's right. It is
Yeah.
different. What an idiot. Could you play a little Summer Rain?
Sure. This is
Best song.
James Hendricks' song. Summer rain taps at my window, west wind soft as sweet dream. My love warms the sunshine, sitting here by me. Yeah. She's here by me.
That is awesome. Thanks. Okay, back to the interview again. What was the music business like? You must have been, you're like you said, you were half in record producer, half his artist, but in the 60s, what was the music business like compared to what it feels like it is today?
Well, it was totally different. You know, back in those days, it had to do with a one-on-one relationship with the president of the record company, the A&R man, the marketing people, the promotion people. You knew them all. You worked with them. You got on the phone. You sat around and you listened to the songs from your new album, decided which one you wanted to put out as a single, and you know, you tested things. It was a real human business. And it was the record business. Now it's the, you know, it was the music business back then. Now it's the business of music. It's two different things, you know. And you know, and of course we had the vinyl records, you know, which gave you something to really hold on to physically. And you not only got music, but you basically got a little piece of the artist. You got some artwork, and you could open them up, and it was like a book and a story. And now you got these little CDs that you kind of need a magnifying glass just to read who played what, or I don't even bother to do it.
Yeah, you're right. Since they came out, I don't read liner notes like I did when they
No, it was a big thing back then. You got more than just the music. You almost got a book, a story, and a photo album besides just the music, and something that actually had better quality. Because no matter what anyone says, vinyl definitely has better quality than digital CDs. It's just warmer and closer to the original recordings.
What other, do you have any other artists or any other projects that are on your the Soul City label?
No, I'm just actually, I've just been doing my own stuff on Soul City now, you know, just concentrating on that. And not to say that if something came along that I got excited about that I wouldn't, you know, try it again, but I'm not actively pursuing it.
Do you have more new projects coming out from yourself?
I've got one that I'm considering. I'm sort of toying with the idea of doing an instrumental surf, skateboard, and snowboard album for that crowd. You know, there's a market there, and it's getting bigger all the time. And I'm thinking of trying an album of guitar instrumental stuff, and with some vocal background, sound effects, and all of that. You know, ocean, birds, wind. I'm giving you an idea away. I hope someone doesn't beat me to it.
Well, I can wait on that one. How did you go about, I think you kind of answered this, but how did you go about picking out a song to do as a cover as opposed to one of your own?
Well, I only did songs that I could do comfortably, that were fun, and that I could sing as though I wrote them. You know, I didn't strain myself in trying to sound like something or whatever. If it wasn't fun and comfortable and easy for me to do, I didn't do it. And most of those songs were things that we played live, and you know, we would get a reaction from the audience, you know, after playing them several times, and we pretty much knew that, you know, this is a great song to dance to. People like to sing along with it. You know, it was all audience tested.
The song Memphis, kind of in the background, you hear like people clapping, and it has that live party feel, not really a live concert feel, but it sounds like you have a bunch of people.
Well, we recorded it at the Whiskey, and then we took it in the studio and enhanced it with some extra hand clapping and stuff, because the mics that were out in the audience at the Whiskey when we recorded it were not placed really well, and you didn't get much of the audience reaction. So we just kind of enhanced it, but it was recorded live at the Whiskey. You know, I've read some things where people go, it really wasn't, but it was.
Okay, good. Could we do a couple more licks from a few songs?
Well, sure. What would you like?
We did Summer Rain, you did maybe a little slow dance in Horse Side of Town.
How about a couple of how about an up-tempo?
Okay.
Long distance information, get me Memphis, Tennessee. Help me find a party that tried to get in touch with me. She did not leave a number, but I know who placed the call. 'Cause my uncle took the message and he wrote it on the wall.
Awesome.
I love that song.
Yeah, that one never gets old. I don't know if we do get any footage. I assume maybe there'll be some newer concert stuff. But as I was telling him before you came in, the way you do slow dancing live compared to the record, where you kind of just started out.
I just
all
myself and the
acoustic,
guitar,
and then
yeah.
the band kind of just kicks in. First time I saw that, I just, oh my God, this song is brand new now. It just had a real nice, cool feel to it, as opposed to.
Well, it makes the audience part of it too. It's real intimate, and I do first and second verse and chorus with just myself and the audience and my guitar, and they sing along on the chorus, you know. Then the band kicks in on the bridge.
Can we have a little of that? Or is that too mellow?
Well, we can do a little there.
Give me a little.
It's late at night, we're all alone. Just the music on the radio. No one's coming, no one's gone on a telephone. Just me and you and the lights down low. And we're slow dancing, swaying to the music. Slow dancing, just me and my girl. Slow dancing, swaying to the music. No one else in this whole wide world. Just you, girl.
Awesome. Thanks. Didn't mean to turn this into the concert performance, but I just have a couple more questions, and then we're about done. One thing I'm trying to get another video show going that's more it's called Rock and Roll Cities, and it's about different areas, you know. And obviously, you had a huge impact on the LA or the Hollywood, California music scene. Of
The West
60s.
Coast sound
West
is what
Coast
they call
sound.
it.
Yeah. Why did they? Could you just reminisce a little bit about that, or what is the West Coast sound?
Well, I guess they called it that. I mean, it was the West Coast sound. Really, I would say is the surf guitar stuff, Dick Dale and all of those guys, Pipeline, of course, the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean and that kind of stuff. And then there was a lot of R&B that came out of here as well. And I guess I fall into that. But my stuff again, like I said, is South Louisiana stuff that kind of combined with maybe a little bit of the West Coast, you know, surf thing and whatever.
Was the time back then in the '60s? I mean, all this free love and drugs and all that stuff, or were you guys really into being artists and doing music, or was it just part of your lifestyle? You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of that was going on. I personally didn't get involved in it. I was just concerned with, you know, playing music and being like, you know, a serious businessman and preserving my health, and which is, thank God, is probably the reason I'm still around.
Yeah, you certainly don't look your age. I'll say that.
What, 39?
Yeah,
Right.
I just turned 40, so you're just under me. Lori, can you think of anything else I might have missed covering?
I think you covered
Could talk-
everything pretty much.
The only other album that I
Or the
didn't go
album.
over was that the one you did in Memphis.
Oh,
back in the early 90s.
the Memphis Sun recordings
Yeah.
at Sun Studios.
That was kind of interesting.
That was.
How did that one come about?
Well, we were in Memphis doing a concert, and the Chamber of Commerce asked me if I would do a little bit of the song Memphis to record in their background and then say a few words to help them out with their TV commercial. So we were looking around for a place to do it, and the guy that owned Sun Studios that had just invited us down there. So I went in there and I looking at the studio, and I said, "Are you guys set up to record?" He goes, "Well, sure." He says, "We cut records here all the time." I said, "Well, you know, the Chamber of Commerce just asked me to help them out with a commercial, and I said, well, maybe we should just do it in here, which would really be appropriate. So we went in there and cut that little thing, and it came out so good when they played it back. It had that old sound from those old Elvis Sun records, you know. And so then I got the idea of maybe going in there back into that studio and recording a whole album as a tribute to the early Sun artists. Of course, Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins. And Carl, by the way, who was always one of my favorites, came down and actually played and sat in on the album. Actually played guitar on me singing some of his songs that he wrote in the original studio where he first recorded them. That was pretty thrilling.
That would be. Did you, was James Burton involved in those too?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, James is an old friend of mine, and of course, you know, he was Ricky Nelson's guitar player in the '60s, and actually, he was the one who was responsible for me to coming to California the first time around. He brought a song to Ricky Nelson that I had wrote, and Ricky recorded it. So I came out to hang out with him for a while and got the California bug, and eventually came back. But and so James, of course, then became Elvis's guitar player. Played with me in the '60s for a while, and so we got James to come back up and play on this one. It was appropriate.
In this last tour, you had Waddy Wachtel, or however you say his last name.
Yeah, Waddy Wachtel.
You didn't play with him in the early days, did you?
No.
But there was the keyboard player was someone you had before, Larry
Knechtel.
Yeah, was he in Bread or not? Or am I
Yes.
thinking of a different guy?
No, it's the same guy. He was part of the group Red.
And did he also play like Bridge Over Troubled Water? That's his
Played on
piano
he
work?
played on Simon Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. He played on my record Rockin' Pneumonia.
Oh, that's
He's an incredible keyboard player. Actually plays great guitar and bass too. He actually played bass on the Righteous Brothers record You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling.
wow.
So yeah, he's a great all-around musician.
Was it? I think I covered everything new and old. And could I have you just do a couple throws to the camera, just kind of introducing yourself to the airline? You know, that would be at the beginning of your piece. Basically, like, "Hi, I'm Johnny Rivers. I hope you're having a nice flight. I hope you enjoy my music." Something like that. You can do that right at the lens.
Sure. Hi, this is Johnny Rivers. We hope you're enjoying your flight, and we hope you enjoy our music.
And then also one for, if you could do it for just another show I'm trying to put together called Rock and Roll Profile. Hi, I'm Johnny Rivers. Thanks for joining me on Rock and Roll Profile.
Okay. Hi, I'm Johnny Rivers, and thanks for joining us on Rock and Roll Profile.
Very good. Any last tunes you'd like to play?
Boy, I don't know.
Hit it on the last train. It's Closer to You. I love your ballads. You can tell I keep going home with the ballads.
On the sunset, Mississippi cotton fields, Daddy's crying 'cause he can't pay these bills. Mama tells me it's gonna be alright. Just play that gospel music, we can make it through the night. Last train to Memphis keeps on calling me. The last train to Memphis could be the last chance to find my destiny.
Beautiful. That'll be a nice way to close the piece there.